He can grant not only what you need, but even more so. It's a superiorness. The other one is it wasn't just manna, right? It wasn't just bread. What is this? They're getting bread and fish. It's like they're abundant, more, and he's really helping. He's involved. It's supposed to show that it's superior. This miracle is supposed to look superior to the miracle that is Moses' miracle, manna in the wilderness. We're supposed to go, okay, wait a second, this cat, there's something here. Our eyes are supposed to be open, or opening, just like the disciples. So continue on with this bread thing, we walk into this next section. This next section, I called it the yeast, right? The yeast of the Pharisees, sometimes the leaven of the Pharisees. When the Pharisees heard that Jesus had arrived, they came and started to argue with him, testing him. They demanded that he show them a miraculous sign from heaven to prove his authority. When he heard this, he sighed deeply in his spirit and said, "Why do these people keep demanding a miraculous sign? I tell you the truth, I will not give this generation such a sign." Did he just feed people in the wilderness? Aren't there people walking around that weren't able to walk before he touched him? Aren't there people able to talk and hear and see that weren't able to talk and hear and see? But those weren't the signs they wanted. They wanted Jesus to perform right now for me. Perform for me. Do my will. Is that how it works? God, unless you act in this one little box right here, like I think you ought to do, then you're not God. Well, wait a second. Who then is the God of the universe? If I am able to say, God, you can only be God if you do this thing, and he obeys, then is he God or am I God? At that moment, I would become God. Right? And he becomes my servant. Okay, that's upside down. So in a sense, what we've got is we've got this spiritual blindness in a sense here. These folks are spiritually blind, but they're willfully spiritually blind. Which is why Jesus is sighing deeply. It's a big thing. They're willfully not looking. They don't want to see any of the other proofs. I don't care what God wanted to tell me the way that God wanted to tell me. I want God to only tell it the way that I want him to hear. It's a willfulness. Unless God acts exactly like this, then it's not God. Really? You get to judge that? When did you get promoted to that role? The this is God, this is not God role. That seems like a pretty strong role. So at the heart of it is a personal pride. There's a lot of it. There's personal pride. Again, who is the God? Who is the judge of the universe? The Pharisees wanted to be the God in the universe. I mean, think about the arrogance. Come before me and prove you're God. Boy, those Pharisees are so arrogant. I would never do something like that. Oh, all the time. God, I'll believe in you if you just let me get a B on this test. I didn't study for it, but I sure would like to get a B. If you give me a B, I'll believe in you. If there's a green light when I come up to this stoplight, when I get to the stoplight, I know there will be a Jesus. Nobody ever does. No, I mean, it's weird. It's weird. I sound silly when I say that, but isn't there a whole level of things like that? God, if you get me out of this trouble, I will know that you're real. Until I get in the next trouble. And the other one is, again, who ought to seek to please who? They're upside down. Their whole thing is upside down. We don't bargain with terrorists, right? That's what Jesus is saying there. We don't bargain because it wouldn't serve the Pharisees. Here's the deal. If the Pharisees are trying to put themselves as the God and arbiter of the universe, and Herod does the same thing in his execution. Jesus, show me your God. Pilate kind of does the same thing. Prove to me that you're God. If he does, what he does is he feeds that idea that they control the universe, which moves them further away from God, not closer. It feeds their willfulness. It feeds their, I want to be God of the universe. It feeds that horrible, dark hunger that we all have. Our wanter that wants to control everything and everybody. That wants everybody to function in a way that would please me. We don't want to feed that monster. It wouldn't help the Pharisees to feed that monster. That's why he can't. I will not give this generation such a sign. That's why he's not doing it. Continuing to read on. So he got back into the boat, and he left them, and he crossed to the other side of the lake. But the disciples had forgotten to bring any food. They had only one loaf of bread with them in the boat. As they were crossing the lake, Jesus warned them, watch out, beware of the yeast of the Pharisees and of Herod. At this, they began to argue with each other because they hadn't brought any bread. Oh, shoot, he knows we haven't brought bread to feed anybody. I saw that.
How quickly did they forget?
How quickly did they forget? I mean, me, I'm not going to forget it until at least I get to the salad bar, right? I'm going to make it all of 30 minutes probably outside church before I forget. But yeah, these guys. No, exactly, right? How quickly? It's a slow reveal for them. Now, let's talk about the yeast or the leaven of the Pharisees. What he's telling them, he's obviously telling them something that is metaphoric, right? He's not literally saying, hey, did you bring any yeast from the baker's cabinet of the Pharisees? No. Yeast has a habit of spreading throughout. So here's what we've got. So when we think about this, the yeast of the Pharisees, the yeast of Herod, it's a pridefulness. There's really a pridefulness in the center of both of them. The Pharisees and Herod, we saw the people that came from Herod earlier in the book, but right here, what we're talking about, the Pharisees, they come with this pridefulness. And really what they do is they desire to be seen of as holy by other people. They're not as concerned about being holy as they are about appearing holy. I want to make sure everybody thinks that they got everything right. Happens in churches all the time. What this leads to, of course, is this leads to hypocrisy. Because when we have something wrong, we cover it up. Or we tell other people to behave in a way that we don't behave. It's all plastic faces, but it all feeds off that same pride. It's really kind of this idea that I'm a good God of the universe. But I'm not a good God of the universe. I'm not even really that good. It'd be great if people thought I was, but I'm not. I'm a fallen person. I make mistakes all the time. What I do that may be good is only there because of God's grace. The bread doesn't come from my basket, it comes from Jesus's. And then Herod, remember Herod when he killed John the Baptist, he was doing it because he didn't want to look weak in front of his friends. He knew about he knew about John the Baptist. He knew about the power of God, but he didn't want to get involved. He didn't want to look weak. It was important for him to seem powerful. Folks, in the church, this leaven, this yeast is still a danger for us today. There are people that are drawn in the church to have power over other people. That would be the yeast of Herod. There are people that come into the church because there are places in the church where folks can exercise authority over other people. It's a temptation. And it's not even necessarily all bad people that fall into this, right? Those bad people. Sometimes it's a very well-meaning person that just figures, well, if I, they start taking the shortcuts and they go, well, with whatever power I have, I'll use it for good. I'll just take this little shortcut, but it'll all work out in the end. It leads to the sin of Herod. The yeast of Herod. The other side is the fact that you're like, well, I can't let anybody know that I'm having this struggle. I got to keep it under wraps. That leads to that, well, sure, I've got everything under control, don't you? Which leads to that hypocrisy. That's the yeast that's found on the other side. But both of it comes from a pride. Comes from an idea that we are the God of the universe, not God. The only way that I can think I'm good is if I'm only looking at what little good I have and not looking at what God looks like for good. The only way I can think I have power and authority in the universe is if I look at the little things that I think I control, not at the big power that God is. My eyes are on the wrong thing. I said Herod's thing leads to hedonism. Hedonism is the idea of doing whatever feels good. Because if you're judged of everything based off of what you feel is right or wrong, then you use that power to feel good. It's not good. All right. So let's continue reading on. Jesus knew what they were saying, and he said, "Why are you arguing about having no bread? Don't you know or understand even yet? Are your hearts so hard to take it in? Have you eyes? Can't you see? Have you ears? Can't you hear? Don't you remember anything at all? When I fed the 5,000 with 5 loaves of bread, how many baskets of leftovers did you pick up afterward? 12, they said. And when I fed the 4,000 with 7 loaves, how many large baskets of leftovers did you pick up? 7, they said. Don't you understand? Don't you understand yet? He asked them. Now again, here's the hope. They didn't get it. God never gave up on them. That spiritual amnesia wasn't enough for God to say, get off the boat. We can have that slow reveal with God, and God's still there with us. He still walks with us. He still continues through with us. I think that's encouraging. We don't have to have it all figured out. There's hope for us yet. And if you think about, God, Christ has spent years with these people, just dragging them along. He's like, don't you get it yet? Come on. Come on. I've done this miracle twice in front of you.